Howdy everyone, this is Magu Magic and our beloved Pulcho from Koala Bandits, and tonight we are going to do another Age of Magic video, which would be a Bliss Spotlight. And
Correct. We're going to cover Bliss, the Cloud Wanderer, the final Cloud Wanderer to be released, and he is the Rogue. By far doesn't look like one, but that is his role within the faction. So we'll go over his stats, his abilities, and have a bit of a mess around with him in the arena and see what this guy can do. So coming in with his stats at completely maxed out, we have 19, just shy of 20 million HP. We have 263 speed, 266k armor, magic damage resistance is 458k, basic damage is 2.3 million, crit hit chance 30%, and critical damage is at 3.3 million. And we can look at his more in-depth stats here. Feel free to stop and take any information you see fit and use it how you see fit. It is there for you. Use it how you want. So we'll jump into the arena now. We'll cover this. As you can see, he's a tap dancer as well. He loves a little bit of tap. This very rogue-like behaviors. So, yep, let's jump into the arena and test this guy out. Jumping into the arena, we have Bliss's basic attack, Sneaky Strike, attacks one target. Attack damage is increased by 5% for every buff on allies. Now, if you choose to awaken this skill, which I don't know, attack ignores armor, so we're not even getting a damage increase from this. I'm not saying that's bad because this character is quite insane in what he offers, so maybe damage increase would be a little too strong, but it's definitely not an ability you would prioritize. So Magu, who are we going to attack? Who are we testing this ability against?
the Chrome, please.
We're going to attack Chrome. All right, let's go ahead. He dashes across the field with a sneaky dagger behind his back, and there you go. Nothing insane with the animation. I mean, he just runs across the field and does a little slash. So there you go. There's his basic. In terms of basic abilities, nothing insane. We're not breaking the game. We're not breaking the faction. It does pretty standard stuff. Let's move on to his next ability. Moving on to Bliss's second ability, we have Enchanting Flute. Cast True Word on all other allies. Effects cast by these allies cannot be blocked or absorbed. True Word dissolves after triggering. Has an 80% chance to cast Charm on 3 random enemies. Prioritizes targets that do not have Charm. Casts True Strike on allies. Next time these allies deal damage, they deal it twice, but it cannot be critical. True Strike dissolves after triggering. Awakening this ability offers increase the number of random targets for Charm. So before we get into anything, let's have a look at the animation of the ability. And so, yep, he just pretty much plays his flute. He's a bard. I don't know why they're calling him a rogue. He's a bard. They should make a
nice.
new... Yeah, it's beautiful.
I like it.
So 100%, it's a beautiful, but they should add new classes to the game. And bard would be a wonderful class. Like, that's one way they could definitely expand in this game, is new classes. But let's talk about this ability because there's a lot to it. Number one is it's bringing 3 new buffs and debuffs to the game. 2 buffs, 1 debuff. So we have True Word. True Word is essentially guaranteeing that you get your buffs or debuffs out. Who is this going to counter? The Van Norths. This is massive. The Van Norths are not going to be able to absorb any of the buffs. Let's just consider Cloud Wanderers for this situation, though it says allies. So this hero is universal. He's not being locked down to the Cloud Wanderers, but when you consider that it's buffs and debuffs and how heavy the Cloud Wanderers use their buffs, you're most likely going to be using him with the Cloud Wanderers. So yeah, this is a massive, massive hit to the Van Norths. It's essentially going to allow you to get your buffs out, and the Van Norths are not going to be able to do anything about it. This is huge, but this is going to excel in Nightmare Raid. This is going to be an effect or a buff that he can cast that is going to help you a tremendous amount in Nightmare Raid, because a lot of the nodes you verse with the Cloud Wanderers in Nightmare contain Van Norths. And it's not stated anywhere, but it's easy to tell that the Van Norths in the raid have been buffed in the sense that their magic absorb rate is a lot higher. So you are going to... Well, that's what I assume anyway. Especially when you're versing like the Ulfrin boss, for example. It happens every time. You do not want to use any ability that uses a buff. So this is going to be huge in Nightmare Raid. Huge. it's going to make the Cloud Wanderer section quite easy if you have this character maxed out. The next debuff that we're getting is Charm. Now, it doesn't say what Charm does. We will go over it more in his passive, but it is essentially a debuff that protects Bliss. And then we have True Strike, which is going to allow you to deal 2 bouts of damage, but you're not going to be able to deal critical damage. And that's why I have this Cloud Wanderer team on the screen. You've got Roxanne, Ramfort, Eva, Capfae, and Bliss, because with this ability, you're almost replacing Astoria, because her buffs increase crit damage, so you're looking for crit. Unfortunately, with Bliss, you're not going to use crit because of this. I'm not saying you won't use it after this, but it's going to be a waste using Astoria's buff at the beginning, because the next section of damage is not going to be critical. So just keep that in mind. You're most likely going to be replacing Astoria. I'm not saying she's useless in any sense. She's still a great hero, but now I think the Cloud Wanderers have taken on more of a Witches vibe, where they have 7 characters, which now can be altered depending on the situation you want to use them. They're not as versatile as the Witches, because there are so many combinations you can use with the Witches, but with this character, you have different ways to use them. I think this version of the team would be more raid-based, and with a story, you could potentially be more PvP based, but again, that would need testing. But yeah, and then the Awakening, I do not think it's needed. It's not bad in any sense, but when you consider that you're most likely going to be running Bliss with Ramfort, I mean, consider Ramfort as probably the strongest tank in the game. How many enemies are bypassing Ramfort? There aren't a huge amount. So Bliss is almost always protected anyway. But if you want that extra bit of security, then by all means. If you feel like it's going to benefit you, I can't tell you where to use your Awakenings. I just personally wouldn't recommend this one unless you really feel like it's going to make a difference. Like I said, testing could change all of this. So there you go. There's his second ability. There's a lot to it. We're getting 3 new buffs, debuffs. So yeah, had to explain a little bit there. Anything you want to add?
No.
No?
It's fine.
Perfect. Okay, let's move on to his next ability. Moving on to Bliss's third ability, we have cards on the table. This is his flying skill. Performs an attack on the target and all charmed enemies. Has a 60% chance to keep its hold after enemies receive damage from this ability. So yeah, the charm debuff will not be removed, or has a 60% chance of not being removed. Awakening this ability increases its damage by 60% and increases the chance of charm remaining after triggering. So a 70% chance instead of a 60% chance. Who do you want to attack?
Your favorite gatekeeper.
All right,
Please.
let's attack Gatekeeper. Have a look at this ability. So we're going to
A
select.
big boy.
He is. All right, here we go. He's doing his little tap dancing and bang. Okay.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, fair bit of damage there. Fair bit of damage there. Okay, so.
Bad for a little goat.
Yeah, little goat boy doing the work. Okay, so I guess if you were really, really after, so like as you can see, it's a pretty big nuke ability. Did a lot of damage there, and yeah, again, I just don't see it as a priority. I'm not saying it's bad. There are so many skills to prioritize with Awakening that it's good to see a hero where we don't feel like we need to awaken the skill to make the character useful. Again, I just don't recommend this. I just don't see an absolute need for it. I'm not saying it will be bad. The damage increase is huge, 60% damage increase. And keeping charm on the enemy is obviously going to be really helpful. Again, this is one of those ones where it's just, do you feel like it's needed? The character isn't going to be made by Awakening, which I think is amazing. Really love it. I don't like being forced to awaken a skill. I just want to be able to use the hero. And so far, you know, the Awakenings on this champion, though they're not horrible, they're not needed. You can do it if you feel like it's going to benefit you. It's not being forced upon you, which I think is a refreshing change to see. So we've got one skill left. We've got his passive. So let's see what this final little bit of skill does to Bliss. Moving on to Bliss's passive, we have Heartbreaker. So what does this goat boy do? At the start of the turn, has an 80% chance to cast Charm on a random enemy. This enemy cannot deal damage to or cast effects on Bliss, removed after target's death or when Bliss deals damage to them. Bliss singles out charmed targets, ignoring any restrictions. Damage to charmed targets is increased by 30%. Every time another ally uses a flying skill, Bliss attacks a random charmed enemy. If no enemies are charmed, he casts Charm on a random one. Awakening's ability. At the start of the round, cast True Word on self. This effect cannot be removed before it ends. So, yeah, there's a fair bit to this ability. Number one, we're looking at the Charm. The Charm is the new debuff he's applying to the enemy. Essentially, it protects him. Protects him from debuffs, protects him from damage. The thing with Charm, though, is if he attacks those units, which he can quite easily do even without your control, he removes that Charm debuff from them. So he's going to be constantly applying them and removing them. There's a bit of RNG to it. End of the day, it's a pretty big damage mitigation to this hero. It also allows him to bypass taunts and evasions and hidden characters, and he can go straight for those targets. If they have charmed on them, he can go straight for them regardless of restrictions. So it's like the ability that characters apply to the enemy where you can attack them if they're hidden. I forget what it's called. That's the same for him, but it's only for him. It doesn't apply to other heroes. And then he has the... it's pretty much focused around Charm. He deals more damage to charmed characters as well. And then the Awakening is interesting. It's every turn he gets, he's getting the True Word buff, which again is going to allow him to cast his debuffs or buffs unrestricted, and they cannot be absorbed either. So it's fairly powerful. Again, this would probably be really powerful in Nightmare Raid. So even though he's a rogue, I think he comes off heavily as a heavy support unit. He offers a lot to the team, and I haven't seen Cloud Wanderers mentioned once here. The only thing is the flying skill. They're the only faction that can use flying skills, so just keep that in mind. But overall, you could mess around and try and use him in other factions. So let's have a little bit of a test with him, a little bit of a play around. We're not going to verse any meta factions, we're going to verse what's on the team. Do you want to have a bit of a test with him?
Of course.
Yeah.
Let's go.
Yeah, okay. So we're just going to have a bit of a mess. We'll fight this team on the screen. It's nothing important, but we'll see how this faction works as a whole now with Catfay and Bliss in the team. So let's jump into it. Okay, so jumping into battle, we have the Cloud Wanderers. So we are going to cast Enchanting Flute first. That is our first goal. We get some strikes. Let's see, it's still 2x speed. Now Catfay. Again, I haven't really used Catfay. Stops enemies from casting buffs on themselves for 2 turns. The flow is what we want. This team is not going to last long. Again, we're going to cast buffs here. Watch. All right, so this is what we're interested in. So, Roxanne is going to be able to deal 2 hits of damage. So this should essentially wipe these guys out. Yeah. So we have 2 hits of damage there. But it couldn't be crit. Still a lot of damage. And then, so is that the buff there? Next time, double damage. So if we come through with our Bliss now.
Oh.
I mean, there's no buffs or anything on this team. It's just a mixed match of random heroes. But yeah, it's a strong... These 2 characters, Catfay and Bliss, yeah, Jesus.
A Peter Pan and a Goat Boy.
You think about it
Together.
like this as well. You think about it like this. This faction, you have, I guess you've got the mage, but again, the mage isn't even really doing any damage yet. You've got tank, the rogue again, which is more of a support unit. Like you're missing the melee damager and the range damager, and that's the damage that the team's able to do when the 2 priority damage dealers aren't even in it. So very, very scary. But there you go. That is Bliss. He will be coming to the game soon, and he will be completing the Cloud Wanderer faction. Anything else you want to add?
Goodbye. Thank you for watching.
Yeah. Anyway, ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for watching. If you have any questions, feel free to leave a comment below. I will answer it to the best of my ability and move around the world. Until next time, please take care of yourself.